It's not often that we get sunlight like this. The very first video on my channel was me reviewing the Time Lord Victorious Dalek figurine sets from Eaglemoss. Now in hindsight I should have milked those puppies for everything that they're worth and made 3 separate videos instead of just one. But looking back, that video made about 100 views in 2 weeks when I had 3 subscribers, so it was a strong start for my channel. Looking back at that video, I was 15 and now barely recognise myself. I'm filming downstairs from a low camera angle in the dark on a desk that doesn't exist anymore, hoping to God that the mic doesn't pick up anything from the kitchen or the living room or just anything other than my voice. So it's safe to say that it hasn't really aged well. Time Lord Victorious was the brainchild of James Goss, and began releasing as a multimedia event from summer of 2020, and over the Christmas of that year I decided to finally get stuck into the other avenues of Doctor Who. I've been a fan since I was 3, but I honestly never engaged with the expanded media. Sure, I'd read through maybe hundreds of TARDIS wiki articles in my spare time like the sad git that I am, but I'd never purchased the Big Finish audio, and the books that I had read were from my sister, or ones that I'd found in the school library by chance. So this event felt like the perfect gateway into Doctor Who's furthest corners. I could find what formats I liked and delve deeper into them. Right off the bat then, Time Lord Victorious as a multimedia event fulfilled its purpose, from my perspective at least. But what I found over that COVID-filled Christmas was, I had no bloody idea how to get half of the stuff. I'd easily gotten the Eaglemoss figures, grabbed the BBC books, and downloaded every audio I could possibly find, but then I hit a block. I couldn't for the life of me find Defender of the Daleks. It took me a good few hours to locate it on Forbidden Planet, check that this was actually part 2 and not me buying another copy of part 1, and at that point it just got really frustrating. Then it turns out that there's another audio that's been delayed massively, so I'm going to have to wait for that. And it got me thinking, if this annoys me, then surely other people are having the same problems, right? So I thought, why don't I start making YouTube videos on the topic? I'd always wanted to make a YouTube channel like most people my age, I just never found a way to properly break into the market. And this seemed to be the way in. I could be the leading guy on Time Lord Victorious. And so on January 8th, I uploaded my first video on the Eaglemoss figures, completely unscripted and done in like 3 takes. It's definitely aged very poorly, but the information is still quite good. You can tell from the description I was going for an easier way for people to find these products all in one place, and for a while that did work. Looking back 4 years later, I did not become the leading guy on Time Lord Victorious, and honestly, that's fine. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I much prefer being more known for the guy who does Doctor Who lore videos. Unfortunately, most of my TLV reviews got barely any views whatsoever, though that's probably for the best. So why not go through them now? Remaster my old videos and complete the set, as last time I missed about 2 or 3 key pieces of the story. Whether that was on purpose or not, I really can't remember. But let's start from the beginning, and I don't mean that Dalek escape room. I'm not going to do that, and I don't think it's particularly relevant. Same thing with the Hollow Planet, though I've linked in the description 3 Welsh blokes doing it that I thought was quite funny, so if you really want to know about it, go see it from them. Anyway, let's dive into Time Lord Victorious 5 years on. So the range properly began with 4 videos released over 4 days in the style of in-universe unit field logs about the time fracture. The first one only has about 6 seconds of actual footage, and the guy interestingly says formerly of Unit, as if you remember Unit was officially disbanded in Resolution, only to come back in Flux like nothing ever actually happened. I can probably show this one without getting copyrighted, so here you go.
Sergeant Robert Dudley, formerly of Unit, reporting from Blackside housing the time fracture. I have serious concerns for the safety of the human race.
Yeah, a bit boring to start off with, but it's just a teaser. The second one looks visually very cool, but since it's a couple minutes longer, you can clearly see the green screen background around the Sergeant back there. It basically just talks about the time fracture and how the 10th Doctor's shoe has come through, leading to this interaction where the guy's just in denial about it.
On visual inspection, the item in question appears to be...
His shoe.
Thank you, Dr. Yates, but we don't know that.
It's the left one. It's clearly one of his shoes.
It ends with the fates of the characters unknown as the time fracture spikes. The third one shows that they are not dead, but taking more precautions and the time fracture is noticeably bigger. It's allowed for Time Lords, Cybermen and Daleks to appear in London. We end with them sending the Sergeant through the time fracture, only to be sucked off and presumably never seen again. The final one confirms the Sergeant is missing, so they've devised a portal using a vortex manipulator to safely travel through the time fracture. The best part is the Doctor has given the team a list of people who he thinks should go through the time fracture and be part of this Operation Time Fracture. But the best part, really, is that you're on the list, as Kate Stewart informs us that you have a part to play. When it comes to advertising, these little teasers couldn't be any better. They're relatively inexpensive and built hype quite well as far as I remember. As for the Time Fracture event itself, we'll get into that later. The next piece of marketing was another YouTube video, The Last Message, featuring a Dalek drone that says it's the last survivor and that it needs to warn the universe of the Doctor. If the unit logs passed you by, which for most people it probably did, this was officially the launch of Time Lord Victorious for you, the first proper piece of the story in the form of a trailer, teasing everything that's to come at the end. And people in the comments loved it. It's full of theories and overall positive support for the events to come. The next piece released was our first comic, Part 1 of Defender of the Daleks. Now, Part 1 and Part 2 were released over a couple of months, so for the sake of simplicity, I'll just do both here. Defender of the Daleks is a fun little adventure exploring the brand new Dalek Restoration Empire. Following on from the Daleks animated series, which we'll get onto later, which itself follows on from The Last Message, the Daleks are hunting the 10th Doctor for his help. They take him to the Dalek Emperor, who explains that they're currently being attacked by the Hond, who was the main villain in the Dalek series. So the Doctor inspects the Daleks' defences, meets the Prime Strategist, and encounters the Hond, ending off Part 1. Issue 2 picks up where the first left off, with the Doctor defeating the Hond with the help from the Prime Strategist, which means that now his purpose is fulfilled, so they try to kill him to prevent all this Time Lord Victorious stuff. It's a good setup story, and relatively inexpensive. There's a cool black and gold Dalek that appears and is never seen again throughout the series, so it makes me wonder if Titan had some creative liberties in the artwork outside of Goss's purview. There are also tons of different covers you could get for these. I think I got the coolest ones because there were about 6 different variants for each story, so 12 in total. This is the coolest one for issue 2, where he's like sending off the Daleks to war against the Hond, even though that's not really what happens in the story because it's just like a gelatinous blob. And then for issue 1, him getting taken by the Daleks. Amazing, honestly, amazing. The Prime Strategist, as always, and you're going to hear this a lot to be honest, is a fantastic character, and that's primarily through how his intelligence is portrayed, which is through the dialogue. He doesn't speak like other Daleks, his words are carefully thought out, he doesn't just bark commands wildly like the others. Perhaps the only thing I can fault this story on is the Hond. They don't feel particularly threatening or consistent to how they were portrayed in the Dalek series. There they were absolutely destroying stuff as the entity. Here the only thing they do is slightly damage the Prime Strategist, and that's about it. Compared to the entity where it would wipe out entire battalions of Daleks, here it doesn't do anything, it just goes. Also, the Vault of Obscenities is surprisingly empty for a Dalek vault full of unimaginable weapons. Just saying. Welcome to the Guide to the Dark Times. Now, there are several different timelines out there on the internet that try to make sense of the TLV timeline, so I decided to take a crack at my own. If I had a green screen, I'd explain it on there, but I don't, so I don't know why I'm mentioning this. Other people either had incomplete timelines or just didn't go far enough. I haven't included a couple on here to be fair, like Secrets of the Time Lord Victorious, Tales of the Dark Times, or the Unit Field Logs, because they're just not that relevant compared to proper stories. It's pretty easy to use. Just start with whoever you want and follow their perspective. So imagine you're the 9th Doctor. You meet vampires, then, uh-oh, how the hell did the Daleks get here? I've got no clue. I'm out of here anyway because I'm not doing Big Finish yet. The best path for the whole series is definitely the Daleks, which does make sense as not only do they have the most stories, but who doesn't love the Daleks? Anyway, on to the actual Guide to the Dark Times. It's essentially what it says on the tin, and with the added context of this being a short story in the official annual of, I think, 2021, its intention is to inform. God, I sound like I'm in a history exam. River Song is explaining the background of the Dark Times, Eternals, Great Vampires, the early Time Lords, etc. It's a nice outline of events, but not a key piece of the story. Doctor Who newsletter gets in on the events with The Secrets of the Time Lord Victorious, starring a data worm that breaks into the archive of Islos and Dalek battle computers to dig up the secrets of the Dark Times. It's a cool little teaser, but there's not much else to say here. Finally, the most substantial piece that I missed from my original run, bar one thing, but we'll get to that later. Originally I missed Monstrous Beauty as I couldn't be bothered to buy then old issues of Doctor Who magazine, as I haven't bought an issue in years and I'd only really be getting it for the story, and since the Ninth Doctor only has this and then All Flesh as Grass, yeah, its path didn't really seem long enough to justify the expense. The plot revolves around the Gallifreyan Space Lords' eternal war against the Great Vampires, only here we don't actually see any Great Vampires, only their underlings. The vampires are presented here as quite sympathetic in comparison to the Space Lords, a good subversion of expectations. Interestingly, we get to see Rassilon here as a female, and since this is before they discovered regeneration, this is their first incarnation. The art is by far the best part of it, and I'd even go as far as saying this is better than what Titan Comics gave us. At the end of the story we get a cameo from the 10th Doctor, making this story strangely the first and last chronologically for the 9th Doctor. The story moves along quite quickly, but I think that's more of an issue that I have with comics as opposed to being a specific problem here. I think the dialogue is a bit iffy at times, and that's most clearly visible with the 9th Doctor, as it seems no writer ever gets him right. Look, I get that Eccleston is Northern, but at no point did his Doctor say, nor can I imagine him saying, keep it stum or get on your bike. I don't know why I went Geordie there. He's Mancunian. Now, I bought a more recent collection of Monstrous Beauty instead of going onto eBay and finding really old issues of DWM, and while it features prominently on the cover as the main story and has the brand new Doctor Who logo, it also has loads of other stories that I don't particularly care about, but if you do, then fair play, like Doctor Who and the Mechanoids, Fear of the Future, The Everlasting Summer, The Man in the Iron Mask, Are You Listening? / Younger and Wiser, Plastic Millennium, and the 7th segment. So if you're interested in those stories, then yeah, I recommend picking it up. At the end of the volume there's notes from all the different writers, and Scott Gray provides the notes for this story. It's a really nice insight into the production process. We hear about his talks with James Goss, and about how this was originally meant to be a story with the 8th Doctor and his old companion Destry, until Titan Comics said, we don't really want to do a 9th Doctor story, and it was chucked onto them instead. I honestly prefer this, as it wouldn't really fit in with the Big Finish stuff later, and Paul McGann's natural habitat is audio, not comics. Speaking of comics, we have more. In 2016, the Doctor Who Comic Creator app was released, where you can make your own free comics using either the free assets available or buy individual packs to expand your roster. Now, what I found really funny with this is that to verify that you're the main account holder, or basically an adult, you have to solve a simple maths question that I'm sure anyone who's like 8 or older could do. I'm honestly dumbfounded at it. The TLV pack is £3, so if either you or your kid are into this kind of thing, then I think it's pretty reasonable, even if it could be lower. I might be wrong in saying that, I don't exactly know the economics of this app. But it also means that to read this story you have to pay £3, and yeah, I'm not doing that, so I just googled it instead. They're alright, thankfully not essential to the main story. The Doctor Who newsletter got in further by sending out a story by James Goss, and by typing in a secret password you can access it. Luckily, because of its nature as an extension of the main website, you can still access it today, secret password and all. This is the beginning point for the Kotturuh, beings that spread the gift of death throughout the Dark Times, and since everyone in the Dark Times, every species is functionally immortal, barring accidents, giving this gift seemed more like a curse than anything. The Kotturuh arrive on the planet of Beringi and assess its inhabitants. Them they see little potential in, so give them a lifespan of only 3 months. But the crystal moths, seemingly insignificant creatures, they see something else in. A nice short story and a good introduction to the primary antagonists for the Doctor, I'll put the link in the description if you want to check it out, and the password is DarkTimes, all caps, no spaces. Perhaps the most interesting piece of the story was a glow-in-the-dark Brian the Ood shirt, limited to just 500. Now, I would have honestly bought it to showcase it in this video, but with such a limited run, no one out there is selling it. If someone is wanting to sell one in a medium, then please do drop me a message. The advertising described this as containing a key piece of the story, and how you access it is by going into the dark. Thankfully, it isn't a key piece of the story, so I haven't missed out on too much. I will say that the artwork in the light is good, but in the dark just knocks it out of the park. If you want to hear the full story printed on the shirt, Captain Jimmy Pie has done a great video on it, and I shall leave that in the description. Now to the first of two I've been dreading, The Knight, the Fool and the Dead, the first of BBC Books' contributions to the series. Is this because I hate books? Well, no, I've been reading quite a few Doctor Who novels lately. The thing is, they just take so bloody long to get through. Luckily, formatting has changed since the 1990s, so instead of 280 walls of text, we have 180 university-spaced pages that really seem like they're trying to stretch the page count. So before reading, I decided to take a look at my original scripts, as I vaguely remember not really enjoying this one as much as the next. And what I came across was the script for All Flesh is Grass, and not this one, meaning I had to go through the grueling task of watching the original video. And it is as bad as I remember. I do feel sorry for the 112 people that watched it, including my dad. I do have some genuinely good analysis at points. Death is not a curse but a blessing, the Kotturuh on the front of the novel symbolising that death is always present, but most of it is just me talking like a Geordie robot. It's strange seeing how after 4 years my accent has taken on more of an RP presenting style. Except for the word book, I kinda flip-flop between the two in videos. To be fair though, it is book, not book. It sounds like you're burping halfway through the word. I've spent this long not talking about the novel's content, so let's segue into the novel's content. In the end, I enjoyed it a lot more than I remember, and enjoyed it a lot more when I realised this wasn't going to be as thick as the EDAs. It takes maybe 2 to 4 hours to read all the way through, so not that bad. The plot has the 10th Doctor exploring the dark times fresh from waters of Mars. He first lands on the planet of Vandalia and sees a presentation for the Life Shroud, a device that is meant to stop the Kotturuh's gift from affecting the user. The Doctor quickly meets Brian the Ood, who is coming from his encounter with the 8th Doctor that we'll come to very soon. And Brian, as always, is a standout character, perfect for deadpan comic relief. It's a good book, not much more I can really say on it. Steve Cole has a long history of writing the 8th and 10th Doctors, so he really does nail their characterization here. Throughout he interlaces interludes of 3 Doctors, each telling a story. The first has the first Doctor in the Cave of Skulls, being told the Brothers Grimm Godfather death story by Barbara, but the story is cut off as he eagerly listens. The next picks up with the 9th Doctor telling Rose more of the story, and after that, the final one has the 8th Doctor telling the rest of the story to Brian in He Kills Me Not. It's nice, keeping in theme with the death motif throughout. It also serves to parallel what the 10th Doctor will be doing here, declaring himself Time Lord victorious as he puts a stop to death, slowly succumbing to his grandiose alter ego over the course of the novel. Lastly, the cover is good, though not as good as All Flesh is Grass. Our first entry is a 2-pack of short trips read by John Coleshaw, who is a bit at the moment. These 2 stories for the most part serve no other purpose than shoehorning the Master into the range, though this mainly goes for the former rather than the latter. The former is Master Thief, and is pretty mediocre. We have the Delgado Master stealing from a vault, and in the process feeling something that he's never felt before. Guilt. It's slightly intriguing, but serves no real purpose. Lesser Evils is by a country mile the better story of the 2, even if the background sounds of forest really took me out of it as I used to hear them at mini-golf as a kid. The story is told from the perspective of a single Kotturuh, spreading the gift of death on a world. Interestingly, not all judgments seem to be part of their grand design. Some she peers into their future and tests their value, whereas others she just grants lifespans on a whim. Strangely here it's the Master, the Ainley incarnation, teaching her the value and beauty of life, that everything has a context and isn't just black and white. Culshaw does a cracking impression of Delgado and a more mediocre impression of Ainley. Culshaw does a cracking impression of Delgado and a rather mediocre one of Ainley, but where he falters in voice, he makes up for in mannerisms. He studied the inflections and vocal patterns of both, and copies them pretty much perfectly. For the price, both stories are honestly completely worth picking up for the quality. Our first entry for the 8th Doctor, and it's him trying to find the 700 wonders of the universe. When he lands on Athana, instead of finding floating cities above the waves, he finds a desert and 2 women on the run from an assassin. The assassin is of course the wonderful Brian, who gets a superb performance by Silas Carson, bringing an air of whimsy to this old-style Western story. The Doctor is of course perplexed as to how time could have shifted so radically, a world that was once luscious with waves and floating cities, now a dry and drab desert. But he puts that to one side, as currently the more important issue is Brian. Brian is hunting one of the women, being Sophie, who is the wife of Felicity, so Brian uses Felicity to trick the Doctor into helping him. They make their way to the local town, and it really conveys the feeling of it being absolutely tiny, like there's only 3 buildings. It's a great story, there's not really much here that I can fault, and it ends on a cliffhanger that will be answered very shortly. Also to note is that each of the 8th Doctor stories uses the War Doctor theme like his Time War series, and here it really does fit quite well. In the Wintertime Paradox, released by BBC Children's Books, there's a rather peculiar bonus entry relating to Time Lord Victorious. Canaries follows the story of Anke von Grissel, owner of the Verbia Museum of the Impossible, containing objects from across the universe that should just not exist. She always gets a call from one person, the only person who calls, and even if they have a different voice, she knows it's that person. And after they call, a new item arrives every time. This time it's 2 ornate bone masks. These masks make the Mordila crystals tremble, the black bow tie rustle, and Captain Adelaide Brooke's diary just turn blank. The Doctor calls again, and pleads with her to let him take the items out of the museum. People are manipulating a time fracture, so these items are like canaries down a coal mine, and having all of them in one place, that is possibly the most dangerous thing you can do with them. Eventually the Doctor calls again, but this time it's the curator, and he warns her there isn't much time left. He explains that he tried to fix time once, and these objects are evidence of that. As the masks rise from their plinths, being seen by people she cannot see, the curator asks her, "Anke, do you know what a paradox is?" So yeah, it's a faction paradox story. Bet you didn't think I'd be able to get them into this video of all things. The Time Lord Victorious elements are very well integrated into the story, but it does feel more like a, yeah, I guess I could add that and make it work. So here we have the first Dalek figures that were released by Eaglemoss, being the Dalek Golden Emperor and the TLV Dalek Drone, both of course of the Restoration Empire. I mean, I think I said this a lot in my original video, but I do just think they're absolutely beautiful little sets. The thing is with Eaglemoss, I mean, I think they're, are they bankrupt now? Do they not exist? I don't know if they've come back or not. It's a weird minefield full of stuff, but anyway. The problem with Eaglemoss that I've definitely noticed is that on the finer details, especially the hemispheres, and on other sets, the eye stalks in particular, the painting can be quite hit or miss. Anything that's sprayed on, like the gold itself, or the silver and the black and brown at the bottom, yeah, you're gonna get a pretty nice coat on that. But when it comes to the finer details, especially later on the Prime Strategist, we'll see, it's honestly not great. But as figures, they are lovely, and as a display pieces, I mean, I put them on a big Dalek plinth that they released and found on Vinted for like a tenner. And they look fantastic as the centerpiece of my own Doctor Who collection. If you want to see a video on that, I might make it if there's demand for it, but I doubt there will be, so that video probably won't come out. Anyway, let's just get a turnaround look of them so you can see the front and back and sides. Yeah, they are beautiful figures. It says 2018 on the base, and I don't think I've noticed that before. Let's have a look. I wonder if that'll pick up on camera. It says Doctor Who logo, trademark and BBC 2018. Makes sense that they put it there, but you think that they might put it on the bottom instead? I don't know. It's part of the figures, I guess. Yeah, they do just look absolutely stunning. I'll say this on all of them, and I don't mind repeating myself, but as figures and display pieces, they are fantastic. But not the main reason that we're here, exactly. No, no, no. There is something more. With each of the releases here from Eaglemoss, we also get a little booklet to go with them. Now, the first 3 sets, being the Daleks, each contain a story in them, whereas the David Tennant 10th Doctor and Brian the Ood doesn't include one. Don't know why I said David Tennant, but there you are. Now, looking at the front cover, something that I've never noticed is, what on earth is this here? This image is, I mean, it's a render that I assume was made specifically for this series. So why in the reflection is there, like, if you can see on there, studio background? Taking a look inside, the first page is a nice little overview of the Dalek drones of the Restoration Empire. Of course, a great quote of attack, exterminate, destroy, the Emperor must be contacted, blah blah blah. All sorts of stuff in there. A page on various different Daleks and the Dalek hierarchy. The Glass Dalek, perhaps an interesting one. Strange that they use comic images up there and not the Necros Glass Dalek. The Dalek Prime Minister in the bottom left, the Supreme Dalek from Planet of the Daleks in the middle, a Dalek Commander, or Saucer Commander, from the Dalek Invasion of Earth. I think that is an original render? I don't know, I can't recall that being used anywhere else. Also some specialities, the Dalek Executioner, first of course featured in this range, and then later showed up on TV itself, though not in this form. And now more recently with the new War Master set, a new version of the Dalek Executioner, but instead of silver it's bronze. Though honestly I'm not a huge fan of the bronze colour scheme being applied with the black and red, honestly. And of course, standard drones from the Time War. The TV comic Emperor, Dalek Prime, and the TV Emperor also Dalek Prime. The Golden Emperor, it's nice to see that the Golden Emperor's returned once more to the canon in a way, because these original comic Emperors and the Dalek comics in general, they don't really line up with what Terry Nation then decided to go and write to TV. It's odd, they're more part of the continuity of the Dalek movies, which does suck honestly, but it's weird that we have to kind of get some jiggery-pokery and fit it into the canon. Evil of the Daleks TV Emperor, Emperor Davros. I assume this is a shot of the prop from an exhibition. Yeah, image by Tony Clark and Dave Handley, so that'll be from an exhibition. And the God Emperor, also Dalek Prime, and his final end. A nice double-page spread on the anatomy of the Dalek Emperor. Remember one of the old 2010-2011 resource books used to have the inside of a Dalek and a Cyberman in it? I think I've still got that in a rather ruined state, mind you, after 15 years, but yeah, it's always nice to see the inner workings of a Dalek and get a nice X-ray look into them. See the mutant in the middle and all the various different points, just listing off what it does. Page on the Emperor of the Restoration, as we had one with the drone, and the Prime Strategist makes a small appearance. And finally, the story, which is the last message. Now, reading through this, it is basically just an expanded version of the little promotional video that was released. It's the Emperor's reaction to that message. I am the last. That's what the drone says. These 4 words echoed in the Emperor's chamber, found in the heart of the Dalek city on Skaro. Yeah, it's an expansion, what he thought of everything that was going on. And it's a nice couple of pages as well, dedicated to this story. And at the end, final description of the Dalek Emperor and the Dalek drone. The second in our trio of 8th Doctor audios. The Doctor has officially been drafted into the Dalek Time Squad, a group of time-sensitive Daleks, each with their own individual unique personalities. Other than the basic drones, we have 4 primary Daleks. The Prime Strategist, the ever-cunning and pragmatic individual of the group. The Execution Unit, the quite possibly mad, trigger-happy individual of the group who just wants to kill the Doctor and everything else around it. The Scientist, who constantly sounds like he needs to blow his nose and for some reason doesn't really know anything about anything. And finally, the Time Commander, who sounds like a Supreme and acts like a Supreme, but listens to the wise counsel of all of his squaddies around him. Throw in the 8th Doctor and you have a brilliant cast to play around with. I always love it when the Daleks are more individual than just mindless killers. There's so much potential with the Dalek Time Squad, and it's really a shame that this is the only story where we get to see their exploits with the 8th Doctor as an unwilling ally. As the 8th Doctor correctly deduced in the previous story, there is something wrong with time. Worlds that should be teeming with life are barren, and vice versa. This is of course due to the Kotturuh being killed by the 10th Doctor, as their gift not being distributed has caused everything to evolve parallel. And so the Daleks have come to Rax to learn more, a warmongering world with inhabitants similar to the Daleks. The Raxians like to take unsuccessful species or species that are too violent and evolve them, putting them down what they deem to be the right path with a fresh start. All of the races that they conquer they like to appropriate, keeping their culture alive inside of their collection. It's really weird to me how, despite the fact that they hate these races, they want to keep some memory of them alive. It's a good story, and originally I put this behind He Kills Me Not, but upon further reflection, I've got to disagree with my past self. Perhaps the most interesting part of the range is the YouTube animations. At the time, these were absolutely slated due to the animation quality, but I don't really know why. What did you expect? It's a free series that was put on YouTube. I know the argument from many is that what YouTubers have been doing for years has been light years better, but what you have to remember is that those were passion projects done in people's spare times. Everything in that was basically free and done over months or even years. This was an animation paid for by the BBC during COVID. For what it is, it's pretty good quality. In terms of story, it's cool to see the Daleks raining down from the skies, and the Chief Archivist here is by far the standout character.
The Daleks have come for your archive.
Do you wish to apply for a membership card?
The absolute stones on that robot. My only real criticism is what the hell are these guys aiming at? And they're meant to be the entire defense force for Islos? 3 blokes in the sky on static weapons platforms. Cool animation though. To tie together a few loose ends and add another perspective, James Goss wrote a short story from the perspective of the TARDIS, rather unimaginatively named What the TARDIS Thought of the Time Lord Victorious. It's a nice bit of added detail, and tells us how Brian made it to the Dark Times after the cliffhanger of He Kills Me Not. That's all it's worth, really. The Edge of Time threw that hat into the ring after a year of release. Talk about irrelevance, am I right? So across the chapters of the game they added loads of TLV themed items, such as a Dalek Executioner's manipulator arm, Brian the Ood's translation sphere, the Black Scrolls of Rassilon, why, a Time Lord Victorious collar stand, a Sonic stake, I don't know what that is, a Dalek gunstick, Sergeant Robert Dudley's unit dossier, and a Judgment Stone of the Kotturuh. And once you collect them all, you can do a little mini-game to power up the 10th Doctor's TARDIS and get his TLV-themed Sonic. And once again, our main man Jimmy Wolf comes to the rescue with a sick custom that I'll leave in the description. Part 2 of the Dalek series, and the main cast are on the run from the Entity, so they send out the Prime Strategist to meet with the Sentinel of the 5th Galaxy. The Sentinel is currently watching over a vault of Daleks, and is voiced by Joe Suggs, for some reason. It's suggested that this army are the same one from Planet of the Daleks, but honestly I don't really buy it. We get one really cool scene of the Prime Strategist talking to the army, and I really love the design of these unique Daleks. It turns out the army has been overtaken by the Entity, leading to a giant firefight between the Executioner's forces and the Entity Daleks, though for some reason they just sit there in rows like revolutionary soldiers. It's a cool visual though. A very good episode, and we wouldn't have to wait long for the next one. Hexagons are the bestagons. This is by far the most boring story of the 5. Not much really happens story-wise, and it feels like this was just put in to justify the animation budget, but that doesn't mean there aren't cool elements to it. For one, I just love the Mechanoids, everything about them in this story. As machines, they know how to build the strongest possible society, and so everything is made out of either hexagons or triangles, the 2 strongest shapes. and they use carbon nanotubes for transportation. It's a brilliant attention to detail. The Mechanoids themselves have been modernised from the 1960s, with the flamethrower being upgraded to look more like a gun than a long stick so the prop doesn't catch fire. The Mechanoid Queen makes an appearance, which does feel strange for a society of machines, but it appears that they've evolved to become more sentient, more like an artificial intelligence than an embedded system or a computer. The Queen is played by our second and last cameo appearance, being Anjali Mohindra, best known for playing Rani in the Sarah Jane Adventures.
What a hoot! The two Ranis!
I do quite like the contrast between the female machine, Queen of the Mechanoids, and the male organic Dalek Emperor. The Mechanoids have evolved to recognise beauty despite their nature, and the Daleks, despite their nature, see nothing in beauty. Other than that, the entire story is pretty skippable. You can sum the whole thing up in my last sentence. Next up we have the Dalek Time Commander and the Dalek Scientist. Both, again, gorgeous figures, I must say. Though of all the sets, I think this is my least favourite if I was to rank them. This would definitely go as number 3. Primarily because the Time Commander is such a, if we get a closer look, such a boring figure overall, honestly. The only difference between this and a drone is that the blue is only around the edge of the hemispheres. Like how on the Scientist it's black around the edges. So it's just silver. Really, really boring. There's a lot more interesting things you could have probably done with this instead of just having such a minor detail changed. The Scientist is fantastic with its unique claw that it uses for interfacing with consoles and that kind of thing. It also shares something which I didn't talk about with the Emperor, is on the back hemispheres, a kind of armour to them. Which, I don't know why a Scientist is getting this, maybe it augments it in some way, not exactly sure. But also, the eye stalk, if we can get it to kind of focus, is slightly different. There's 3 individual points on it. You can kind of see it there, just on the top. And weirdly with mine, I don't know if I'll be able to get it to focus on it, but the top is yellow for some reason. It's painted yellow. Which is what I'm saying about it being hit or miss. The hemis in general with this set are awfully done. I mean, when I originally got this set, I had to send it back because just the top of the Scientist was completely broken. But the painting just feels so slapdash, especially around the hemis on the Time Commander where the blue... I mean, you'd assume this would be easier considering that the whole thing is sprayed silver, so you just have to put a little bit of blue on, but yeah, it's very hit or miss. In certain places with the Scientist, the black kind of overtakes the red and it doesn't look great, which, yeah, not a huge fan, but we make do with what we have. At least it isn't broken, I suppose. So now having a full look round at the front, back and sides, yeah, also still beautiful figures, especially the Scientist with that unique claw arm, unique eye stalk, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but all of them have got unique dome lights for some reason, which means that making customs of them, you kind of have to change the dome lights. I don't particularly care for it, but we'll get onto that at some point later. But yeah, fantastic figures yet again. So onto the booklet. Nice renders on the front of the 2 Daleks. And down at the bottom you can see the blue over the hemispheres and the bit of armour on the back, though it seems to be, on the render it's the same armour that was used on the other Daleks, I think the Emperor and the Executioner, if I'm not mistaken. But on the figure it just seems that they've done something odd there. But Time Lord Victorious, Dalek Scientist, Dalek Time Commander. Taking a look inside, a page to start off with on the Dalek Time Commanders. We shall continue the bombardment until they obey Dalek commands. A showcase of Dalek history through different Dalek commanders. The Saucer Commander, again from Invasion, the Dalek Invasion of Earth. The Supreme Controller, which I think is also from Dalek Invasion of Earth, judging by the lack of solar slats around it. The Group Commander from The Chase. The Dalek Supreme from the Daleks Master Plan. The Imperial Guard, which, I mean, is that really a commander in a way? And also, why is it here when you have then the Gold Dalek from Day of the Daleks in between them? How odd. How the Daleks discovered time travel through Dalek time corridors, time ships, and temporal shifts, which we will get onto with the next story after this one. Scientists of the Restoration, a nice page dedicated to the Dalek scientist, and yet again featuring the Prime Strategist, always lurking throughout, it seems. Ranger scopes report the entity is already in Skaro's atmosphere. Nice little quote from the Daleks animated series. A X-ray of Dalek sources, a look into Dalek science, various different aspects and stuff. Bit boring on that. And finally, the story of this mission to the known, taking place from pages 83 to 85 of All Flesh is Grass, but here this is from the Time Commander's perspective instead of a general perspective. So, nice little overview of what he was thinking at the time, and seeing the Executioner twitching to kill him if the plan goes wrong. Nice couple of pages dedicated to that, and then of course at the end, the two figures. The Minds of Magnox follows the Doctor and Brian on the titular Magnox. The Doctor is looking for an answer to his question, one that turns out to be really stupid and subjective, while Brian gets in with a local hit squad and meets back up with the Doctor. This story didn't really do much for me on first listen, and it doesn't do much for me now. Jacob Dudman is really good as a narrator. His David Tennant impression isn't as good as Matt Smith, but it still works. For some reason, Goss decided to place this story inside of All Flesh is Grass, a story which it does not push forward whatsoever, and rightfully so, to be fair. The only thing this story does do is give us an extra adventure within the Dark Times, and also explain how the Archive of Islos got there. That's it, though there is a pretty cool cameo at the end. A waste of an hour, really. The entity is here, and the Mechanoids stand no chance against it, but oddly enough, all it wants is the last of the Daleks. Using the orbital defences around Mechanus, they banish the entity away, but not before the Emperor is attacked and battle-scarred. There's some really impressive animation in this one. The Prime Strategist in various scenes looks quite sharp compared to everything else, and the Mechanoid dome failing against the power of the entity looks magnificent. It's a shame really that this episode had the lowest viewer count, but I guess that's what happens when it follows perhaps the worst. And now for the last set, being the Dalek Prime Strategist and Dalek Executioner. Now this is definitely my favourite of the three, I must say. Of all three sets, this is by far the best. It's got the two best Daleks, I mean at least in my opinion. The most unique of them all, the Prime Strategist in his original Skaro City casing, and the upgraded Executioner who is poised to just kill anything in his path. Yeah, I really do love this set quite a lot. It's the two most unique Daleks, and I'm glad that they were paired together, as I think if I was to just buy one of these, I'd definitely just go for this one, as, yeah, they're the two most unique Daleks, and to have those as part of your collection, wonderful. The Executioner especially, with his unique claw arm, red eye, nice little red trim around the black hemis, wonderful, wonderful Dalek. So just to get a full look round of the Daleks here, especially the Prime Strategist, who is just chock full of detail. Yeah, I can't sing this set's praises enough. They are just beautifully crafted, and I think especially when it comes to the paint, it's a lot better here. It's not perfect in places, especially if we just take out the Prime Strategist and have a look at its eye, if I can get that to focus. Yeah, the paint on it is in one spot in the corner for some reason. No clue how they've managed to bugger that bit up, but it's an easy fix if I was to go and try and fix it, but might as well leave it as it is. To get a look at the Prime Strategist on his own, his casing is just chock full of little details, battle scars here and there, little broken bits. In the comic, in Defender of the Daleks, part of the front of his grill is just taken off so you can see the mutant inside. I'm not surprised that they didn't do it here. That would be something that's very difficult to accomplish, especially when all of them are vacuum molded, I assume? Because these are made of resin, so I'd assume that either they're printed or just molded out of a mold. I'm not sure, but yeah, a fantastic figure to look at. And of course the most unique Dalek of the range, and what's not to love. And of course, the booklet of the two with two fantastic renders of both of them. For some reason, everything, the Prime Strategist always seems to be a lot sharper than every other Dalek. And you can see on the eye stalk there a little bit of battle damage, like a bullet has hit him. Looking underneath, a bit more battle damage on his side. Time Lord Victorious, Dalek Executioner, and Dalek Strategist. Cracking open the booklet, the Dalek Executioners. 3 population bunkers located, 3 population bunkers eradicated. That's a quote from the archive of Islos. Just an even better look at that render there. Continuing on, we have the Assassination Group and Dalek Assassins, mainly referring to the Chase as the Time Squad hunted down the First Doctor, and Resurrection of the Daleks with Dalek agents like Lytton. More specialised Daleks, the Special Weapons Dalek, seen again of course in Magician's Apprentice and Witch's Familiar. The lone Time War survivor, the Metaltron, with that'll be another gallery photo I reckon, of somewhere in an archive. A collection on display. Page for the Dalek Strategist. Older than the Restoration Empire, who knows what it's planning? Indeed it is, the oldest of the Daleks. The Dalek Gunstick, nice x-ray of it. Various deaths over the course. I guess if you're going to have a booklet that includes the Dalek Executioner, you've got to have a page, double page spread on Dalek deaths. The original death, Tomosis, the leader of the Thals, as he killed trying to get food for the Thals. A rebel prisoner in Dalek Invasion of Earth, a Mechanoid, the Exilons who got just destroyed. The arch traitor, the Thal spy Ronson, an excellent line there from Michael Wisher. The Dalek prisoners, especially that one who, if I remember correctly, gets shot and then a good 2 seconds later just falls over with no death rattle or scream or anything. An unnamed soldier in Remembrance of the Daleks, the first one to have proper computer generated graphics on the Dalek laser, instead of just however they used to do it, where they draw it around them, I guess. Simmons, who's killed in Dalek by the Metaltron, and of course the 10th Doctor, who is shot by a random stray Dalek in the street. And the final story, Exit Strategy, which reveals more into the Dalek Prime Strategist's thought processes, and it's really just a great look into him himself. It's a nice look into his plan after mutually assured destruction, if he had gotten back to Skara, what he would have done and what he still can do, as this is the first recorded appearance of an emergency temporal shift, as seen there, though I don't think it'll focus on that. Emergency temporal shift using Mordila crystals. So does he then go on to become Emperor, as his higher aspirations are? Who knows? Then we have the final page, of course, with the 2 remaining figures. I thought also it'd be worth showing off my custom Dalek Executioner, done from, I think, from the History of the Daleks 2-pack with Dalek Sec and probably like Dalek Khan or something like that. One of those. But this is just, I love it so much. It came out really, really well. The red around the hemispheres on the black, the red underlining on the grille, and of course the custom claw arm, which is credits to Captain Jimmy Pye yet again. Fantastic guy putting that out there. That is resin printed. The ones that he sells are filament printed instead of resin printed, and apparently to many, these aren't my words, I've not bought anything from him, but according to many are not the greatest of quality. They're quite cheap filament and snap easily, which I wouldn't really recommend buying if you're looking for something that's going to last. Definitely don't go for something like that. And of course, as he comes back round, we've got the red eye stalk. Just a fantastic little custom there. And for a second custom, this is also a work by Jimmy Pye yet again, Jimmy Wolfe. It is the Mechanoid from Time Lord Victorious with the gun attachment. Now this is filament printed, and this was one of the first custom figures I ever got. And unfortunately that does mean that the filament is particularly not very smooth. That's the phrase, I guess. The painting is spectacular. It's sprayed on, and then at the top with the orange and black, that's just painted on by hand. along with the blue sections where it kind of alternates between them. So it goes from like a light blue, here we go, dark blue, light blue, nice in the middle, looks like it's speaking. Just looks fantastic, honestly. Now for a story that isn't a waste of an hour, Mutually Assured Destruction. In the fallout of a battle that we haven't seen yet, the 8th Doctor is sabotaging the Dalek timeship as it crashes through the vortex. By far the best part of this is the character work from Lizzie Hopley, the characterisation of the 8th Doctor and the Daleks. The problem with Daleks in stories is that they can just feel like foot soldiers, and here we get proper development on each of the Time Squad members that was only really glimpsed in Enemy of My Enemy. Each Dalek has something to do here, their own unique personality and motivations within the story. I've touched on this before, but I'll just go over it again. The Time Commander, now post All Flesh is Grass, thinks that the Prime Strategist has failed. His alliance with the Doctor has acted against the Empire's interests, and so now he's a liability. The Prime Strategist is now acting entirely for himself, and as we saw in Exit Strategy, has his own higher aspirations. He just wants to get out of here alive, and only cares if anything gets in his way. The Scientist is now a proper character, and the Doctor dances with him in Zero Gravity for one of the funniest scenes of the entire series. The Scientist is a snivelling, full of intellect, holier-than-thou worm, and despite being the most intelligent on the ship, he just listens to what everyone else tells him to do. And finally, the Executioner, who is so blinded by his task to exterminate all aliens, is just destroying drones in his path. His bloodlust truly knows no bounds. Adding the 8th Doctor as an antagonist to the mix really elevates this story. It's great to see him playing around with them in the background, sabotaging them at every step as they slowly disintegrate in the vortex. What I wish is that this entire story was just dedicated to him sabotaging them in the background, all in the goal of reaching his TARDIS, but it isn't. Instead, we have a lot of time dedicated to the subplot of the cryogenically frozen Tiska and Groth. I just don't really care much about them at all. They didn't really need to be here, and it feels like they were added just because the 8th Doctor needs a temporary companion for the story, which is something I wholeheartedly disagree with. I mean, it would have definitely brought down the casting costs. A great story to round off the trilogy, and definitely one worth listening to. The final episode. The Daleks are now on the run from the Mechanoids, who for some reason they just let leave? So, now back on Skaro with the Mechanoids hot on their tail, a plan must be devised, and quickly. The Mechanoids arrive intending to destroy the planet, so why exactly they had to let the duo leave to do that, I don't know. But it puts the Mechanoids exactly where the Strategist wants them, creating one of the coldest moments. The vaults of Skaro were still full of drones ready and waiting, starting a full-scale battle. The Strategist fakes being a traitor, and the plan goes into play as he tricks them in a chamber that looks like the visualizer room from City of the Daleks and has the ambient hum of the Daleks. By tricking the Mechanoid scientist, he pulls all of the Mechanoids into where they banished the entity, a Dalek until the end. Speaking of the end, the entity has one last message for the Daleks, a warning of what is to come. But considering we have seen what's to come in Defender of the Daleks, I'm left feeling a bit underwhelmed. Rather odd is Genetics of the Daleks, continuing the story of the lone Time Squad survivor adrift in space. The whole story not only feels like just an excuse to get Tom Baker involved and drop one of the hardest pieces of 4th Doctor art we've ever seen, but it is literally just a tie-in to A Dalek Awakens to sell more tickets and get more downloads. On the Starship Future await 10,000 colonists in cryogenic suspension. A skeleton crew left in charge come about something drifting in deep space, an empty Dalek casing with no mutant to be seen. This crew is about to learn just how dangerous an empty Dalek casing can truly be. Now, elephant in the room, though this is really just a personal gripe of mine, so I'm going off on a huge tangent here for really no reason. The Dalek casing used on all of the promotional material. In the last message, we clearly see that this is a TLV silver drone, plain as day, right there. You can even see the blue hemispheres. Yet in everything else, including the cover of this story and the webcast trailer that was released previously to this story, they look like this. Bronze. Why? Well, my assumption is that because A Dalek Awakens came out a few months before this range, and it was probably said to him at some point, can you please tie this in? And since it was already there, it was like, yeah, sure, don't have to spend any money on it. A problem arose from the fact that the Dalek used as the centerpiece of the escape room is this design, a bronze New Series Dalek, which makes complete sense. So when Goss decided for the event, why don't we repaint the Daleks in a new Empire, yeah, this doesn't really line up as well as it should. The explanation given here by EDA's veteran writer Jonathan Morris is that in space the Dalek rusted and so lost all of its colour and became bronze. A fact that makes no sense when you remember that deep space has no oxygen, and so the metal cannot oxidise and rust. A painted Dalek, no matter how badly damaged in deep space, will not lose its colour to the elements. I swear I'm the only person who's noticed this or even really cares about it, even though I know it doesn't really matter. With that out of the way, what of the story itself? The Fourth Doctor arrives and only really nudges the crew in the right direction, as not only is there a Dalek on board, there are sleeper agents among the crew planning a hostile takeover. In terms of defeating the Dalek, the Doctor himself does very little. It's the crew that take charge and rise to the occasion, putting their lives in their own hands, even if in the end, as we can see from the escape room, not everything goes to plan. It's fine. On to all flesh is grass. The Avengers Infinity War of the series, the Clash of Titans, has arrived. Immediately what this novel doesn't tell you is that between chapters 3 and 4 the Minds of Magnox takes place, and from page 83 to 85 is Mission to the Known, just from a general perspective here instead of from the Time Commanders specifically. Why it doesn't tell you at all, or even mention the word Magnox, is beyond me. For the novel itself, this is definitely a step up from The Knight, the Fool and the Dead, partially because we actually find out which one is which here. The Knight is the 9th Doctor, not particularly for any reason, I think it just fits. The Fool is the 10th Doctor, for obvious reasons. Juggling 3 separate incarnations of the Doctor is no easy task, but Una McCormack here makes it seem effortless. Her primary method is to limit interactions between the 3, dividing and conquering them all, and using the side characters to mediate between them. 9 primarily spends his time with Madame Akala, 10 and 8 with Brian at various different points, and 8 mainly spends his time with the Daleks. I think all are handled fairly well. There's a good balance between them, no Doctor seems to be overtaking another. I will say of the 2, this has the better dialogue for the 9th Doctor, though there are some weird choices. Like him saying, aye aye. That's a Newcastle thing, not a Manchester thing. But for the most part his dialogue is a lot less, hello Rose Tyler, and more, I think that you need a doctor. I can actually imagine Chris saying this stuff. As for story content, it's 199 pages, making it 19 pages longer than The Night blah blah, so we can fit a lot more in. But at the same time, since we're directly following on from 3 separate stories, McCormack doesn't need to worry about setting things up. She's got more time to explore the relationship between the 3 Doctors, more worlds within the Dark Times, the Daleks and their experiments, and wrap it all up for the next 2 stories. She knows how it's meant to end, she just needs to get there and she does it well. I'd definitely say pick this up. It's really great even without the rather redundant Minds of Magnox. And now for what I believe to be perhaps the biggest miss of all of them. Definitely the worst of the 4 that they released in total. The 10th Doctor as the Time Lord Victorious and Brian the Ood. This was released a lot later on, and unfortunately the booklet, though I will still go through it, doesn't have a story in it. It doesn't have any interesting adventures between the 2 in the Dark Times, like the Minds of Magnox, which is probably the only reason to pick up that story, honestly. The fact that it's these 2 having an adventure in the Dark Times, they must have had so many. It's, I think between chapters 3 and 4 of All Flesh is Grass, a good week goes by. So they definitely got up to something with the Victus fleet. Or is it just the Donna by that point? I can't really remember. But as the figures themselves, I think Brian looks great, but focusing on the 10th Doctor, yeah, it's a bit dire in terms of the paint, I must say. His face looks really, really skinny. For some reason. Get a closer look at him. Just focusing on him, the paint application, it's kind of precise. His eyes look good, the damage to his face looks good, the hair is very good with his sideburns, but his face just looks really skinny. I think overall on the robes, there's a little bit of printing here. That's definitely not painted on. It's probably just sprayed on using a stencil, I'd assume. It's got a sonic screwdriver out as well. Yeah. It's just a bit underwhelming. Though it is cool, it's just, yeah, a bit underwhelming. Getting a look round at both of them, Brian for sure is the better figure of the two. In terms of paint application, I don't think there's any misses on the paint, except for maybe the tendrils being a bit white, so I think that might be intentional. Yeah, of the two, Brian's definitely better, and it's just such a shame that all this set had to offer were the figures themselves. The figurines. Figurines? Are they figurines? Or are they, like, I keep calling them figures, but, like, are they statues? Are they figures? Figurines? Toys?
They are not toys, they're figurines!
But yeah, I mean, for what we got on this, they're alright. Certainly the worst of the four, but still, good thing to have in my collection. And I'm really glad before they went into liquidation I bought a TARDIS console for them to go with, because them just standing on their own would have looked really weird. Especially when I later got the 8th Doctor Lucy Miller and Dalek Time Controller, and you could put them all around the TARDIS console. Brilliant. And now, of course, for the booklet. 10th Doctor is a Time Lord Victorious and Brian the Ood, two great Photoshop composites of the two. And on the bottom, Time Lord Victorious, the 10th Doctor, Brian the Ood. So, taking a look inside, starting with the Time Lord Victorious. God, I love every single piece of graphic design that was done for this series. They are all just so gorgeous. The background, the composites of the characters themselves, especially him in his robes, his battered robes. I don't know what images they've used to make this, but my god, they are gorgeous. The idea for Time Lord Victorious originated with the end of the 2009 special, The Waters of Mars. James Goss, the producer of the epic multimedia saga that we celebrate in this issue, says, "A chastened Doctor has literally taken on death, and now he's on the run from it, and the TARDIS is falling through time, but to who knows where." Interesting, yeah. Definitely good to hear from James Goss himself, the main man of the range. Further, just more great renders. Wonderful look of Brian on that. Fantastic. Jody Houser. The first release in the Time Lord Victorious saga was by Titan Comics, Defender of the Daleks, and that was written by Jody Houser. I didn't know that, I must say. Oh, okay, so Scott Gray, Steve Cole, it's going through all the different writers in this one. So that's what this is primary for. It's not story, this is more of a celebration of the people who've worked on the series. Scott Gray for Monstrous Beauty, Stephen Cole for The Night, the Fool and the Dead, Sophie Isles and Simon Gurrier for Master Thief and Lesser Evils. Continuing on, Carrie Thompson with He Kills Me Not, Tracy Ann Baines. Excellent addition with The Enemy of My Enemy. This is a case where one of the Big Finish interviews, which I think I'll talk about later, really good Big Finish interview with her, I must say, compared to usual where they're not. Alfie Shaw, who wrote both of Echo of Extinction's parts. Darren Jones, who wrote The Minds of Magnox. Not great entry from you, if I'm honest, Darren. Lizzie Hopley, excellent with Mutually Assured Destruction. Una McCormack, the same with All Flesh is Grass. Wonderful. Veteran EDA's writer, Jonathan Morris here, with Genetics of the Daleks. And Chris Allen, who wrote the Dalek series. Also very, very good. Following in the footsteps of the famous 1960s TV Century 21 comic strip, Daleks also sees a surprise but welcome return of the Mechanoids for the first time on screen since The Chase, and Alan doesn't want to stop there. We have a long list of old monsters that are begging for a CGI revival, he teases. Interesting. Though I don't think that really went anywhere, so I guess not. And Neil Corrie, who I'm assuming wrote all of the stories, Exit Strategy, Mission to the Unknown, and The Last Message. And at the end, advertisement for something you've probably already bought, if you've got this. Now nearing the Time Fracture release, Immersive Everywhere released a couple of items on their Twitter. A video of a Silent moving around, easy marketing I guess, and 3 separate parts to a story by Jamie Lenman, who is a brilliant illustrator that does the Big Finish promos in DWM. It's not the same length as the old comic panels that DWM used to do, but it's still really good. And for the final audio, Echoes of Extinction, originally said to be released in November, but was unfortunately delayed due to lockdown measures to April. This meant that a lot of people who bought it on vinyl weren't very happy. I was not one of these people, as neither do I particularly care about Big Finish vinyls. I don't really have the space to store them, nor do I have anything to play them. But I can see the appeal of it, as since this story is split in two between two Doctors, it makes best use of a record having an A-side and a B-side. Interestingly, this is the first story to feature David Tennant as the 10th Doctor, despite the entire range revolving around him. So, was it worth the wait? Yes and no. The big thing about this story is how it features a lot of returning cast members from other corners of Doctor Who, and this is the first post-story interview where they mention lockdown and how that's the reason for all the returning actors. They needed people who were reliable. We've got Bern Gorman in his first mainline Doctor Who role outside of playing Owen Harper, Catherine Drysdale, who was in Love and Monsters, Arthur Darvill, who played Rory Williams, Meena Anwar, who played Geeta Chandra in the Sarah Jane Adventures, and Paul Clayton, who played John Colchester in the Torchwood audios. The story itself is 2 stories of half an hour, and since they're interlinked, you can listen to them in any order depending on the path you're following. Or you can just listen to them both at once like I did. To me, this format works to its detriment, but only really in the second story. The first only has a grand total of 4 characters, and so because it doesn't have to set up loads of different side characters, it can put the story first. The second has 3 new characters added alongside 2 returning from the previous story, making 6 including the Doctor. And so when the 3 new characters are gradually killed off, I just have no feeling whatsoever towards them. I don't know them, and so I particularly don't care when they die. I reckon each being 45 minutes would have helped, but it's something that they probably would have done if they could. It's fine. It's a quick 1-hour story that you don't really have to pay too much attention to, and so feels entirely skippable. What interestingly this did make me think about is how crap Big Finish interviews usually are. If you don't listen to the audios, after almost every story or series, there's a post-story interview at the end of it going through the key cast members and getting their thoughts on the story. And the problem stems from the fact that most of the time they're really rather crap. The actors are clearly struggling for things to say about the scripts that aren't just, I really liked my character because of this, and this is something that I haven't really done much before. Or something like, I read the script from start to finish, which isn't something that I usually do, but this was such a gripping story that I just had to keep going and going and going. The thing is with this story's interview is that the actors do actually sound interested. They have something to say. Recording remotely was completely new, so they all have a story about how they recorded it and the challenges they faced and how they overcame them. And since it's on vinyl, Bern Gorman gets to go off for a good 5 minutes about how much he loves vinyls. I really do wish more were like this. Time Fracture. This one hurts. Twice, me and my family tried to attend Time Fracture, and both times we ended up making it down to London, just to find out that it's been cancelled because of flooding, or this issue, or that issue, or something came up, and unfortunately we just couldn't do it because it wasn't on. Now, in the one case, it was a couple months beforehand, but you can't just change an entire trip to London, especially considering where I'm from. It's a 9-hour trip down there. So what can I tell you about it? Nothing. I wish I could say more than the trailers looked incredibly awesome, and I wish that I went. The event is over now really, but there's still a metric ton of Twitter posts from Immersive everywhere, and also Worlds Apart, but we don't really talk about that one. The failed Docky Who TCG that got caught up in the NFTs scandal. 2022 was wild, man. The first one introduces Dr. Shaw, not Liz, who puts Clara Oswald's book 101 Places to See in the Black Archive, for some reason. The second is an image of a Cyberman with a description. The third is of Brawls, who is a pig slave and unique to Time Fracture. The fourth is just Brian. The fifth is Queen Elizabeth I. The sixth is Leonardo da Vinci with an iDrive. The seventh is a new incarnation of Romana, likely hailing from the 8th Doctor's time, who, contrary to popular belief, is not non-binary. They're just referred to using gender-neutral language, as any actor could have played the character during your experience. And the 8th and final promotional image is of Zoria, who is also unique to Time Fracture. The next post is of them commemorating Pancake Day, and then we get back to the videos, with 3 more from Sergeant Dudley, who isn't dead, he's just stuck in Elizabethan England, now Sir Robert. And now for the final video, a Worlds Apart update video released in February of 2024, last year, for no good reason. Unfortunately, that 6-minute video is now gone, privated, lost to time like Worlds Apart itself. I don't really remember it, but I probably watched it, and from the synopsis it sounds pretty cool, to be honest. But that's it. To wrap up, I'll say what I think the essential stories are, and then some closing thoughts. What's essential to your Time Lord Victorious viewing experience? Well, I've drawn up a slightly smaller guide, cutting out all the random crap and minimising costs where possible. 4th Doctor, there's no need. Merchandise you can't buy officially anymore? Sayonara. Now, I would like to say that Echoes of Extinction and particularly Monstrous Beauty can be skipped, but I can see the argument for keeping both. 9 is strapped for content anyway, so you might as well make the most of him, and Echoes ties up and kicks off 10 and 8 respectively, though I do think that he kills me as a better introduction for 8. If you want to minimise cost, I do think this is the best way to do it, and everything that is listed here is still available to buy, unlike a lot of other stuff. A lot changes in 5 years. While I think that Time Lord Victorious was an excellent concept, with each story being of a very high quality when listened to or read in context, outside of that, some major flaws start showing. The biggest, of course, is COVID-19 derailing the entire thing, making communication for James Goss very difficult and production even more so. The multimedia format fueled this further, as when you have Big Finish, Titan Comics, Doctor Who magazine, BBC Books, BBC Audio and Animation Studio, Eaglemoss and more to wrangle together and release content on specific dates, it's a miracle that only a single story was delayed throughout the entire thing. I think as an event to get more people involved in the expanded media, the idea was definitely there, but the execution was just a little bit too convoluted to dip your toes in and get a worthwhile experience. Something like that only really works well for some mediums and not others. If you want to read just both the comics, that's fine. Sure, you won't have any idea of what follows them, but they're good stories on their own. Defender of the Daleks more so than Monstrous Beauty, I'd say, as you have a free animated series alongside it. If you listen to the 8th Doctor trilogy in a vacuum, sure, you'll understand the first 2 stories, but Mutually Assured Destruction won't tell you why the ship is now exploding. If you wanted it just for the Dalek figures, fair enough, but at that point, did you really want to explore the story, or did you just want cool Dalek figures? It's definitely a series to either be explored in full by going through the major events, being the entirety of the 10th, 8th, 9th and Dalek paths, or just focus on a single path. And I think that was the intention really, for each path to represent how deep you want to go. The 9th Doctor only has 2 stories, so someone that only really wants to dip in and out and have a good idea of what's going on definitely can do so. The 8th Doctor's path is an easy and relatively inexpensive one, most of it's audio and feels like a middle ground between 9 and 10. The 10th Doctor's path is for the people who really want to get involved. They want to see as much of the primary story as possible and of course follow the protagonist. The Dalek path is for people who want everything. Every Doctor, every nook and cranny, they're the ones who kick it off and they're the ones who end it. While I definitely don't agree with the people who say that it was a dumpster fire, it definitely could have been a lot better. Not slightly better written, just more organised, and not too reliant on people absorbing everything to get the full picture. At least it told the BBC that maybe there wasn't such a big audience for multimedia events, so they won't try this again. Right? Maybe 3rd time's the charm. But that was Time Lord Victorious. If you enjoyed, then... Do you know what? I've been talking for way too long now. I'll let someone else do it.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my YouTube channel down below. There should be some more reviews out soon, and I'll leave any links in the description. Thanks for watching.